May I ask the crowd a question first? How many of you guys believe that recycling is beneficial? Can I get a show of hands? Okay. How many of you guys throw your trash into these plastic and glass recycling bins that you guys see on the screen? Right. And one more question. How many of you guys think that that's a good thing? Great. So, there is more plastic on Earth than all of animal life combined. Microplastics exist everywhere, from the water that we drink, the food that we eat, and even in human placenta. It's a gross fact, but it's true. And this plastic consumption and plastic production keeps increasing worldwide. We produced 2.1 billion tons of trash, which fills 822,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. But you might be thinking at this point, but I recycle, so I'm probably not a part of this problem. Well, we've been programmed to believe that putting our waste into the recycling bin solves this problem. And I'm here tonight to tell you that recycling isn't exactly doing what you might be thinking that it does. Only about 16% of what we throw away is actually recycled in the first place. So the question then remains, where are all the 672,000 swimming pools going? So the other thing that's important to remember is that when recycling occurs, it's not necessarily environmentally or economically viable. Processing recycling causes unto itself greenhouse carbon emissions, and it's often very expensive, more so than simply using new virgin materials. And additionally, producing new materials hasn't actually decreased since the adoption of the recycling system, and it's expected that plastic production worldwide is going to double within the next 20 years. Carbon emissions solely related to plastics could reach 1.3 billion tons by the year 2030. This is important because that's 10 to 13% of the total carbon emissions that we'd be allowed to have in order to stay under 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming. So recycling hasn't actually fixed the problem. That's nowhere near the case. And I think I'm actually going to make the argument that it's actually more dangerous as it creates a smokescreen to the average person thinking that, yeah, we got this under control, we're doing a great job. However, the problem really is that not that we need to recycle better. However, we buy too much, we throw too much away, and there's nowhere for it to go. So the only way to fix this is to totally revolutionize our relationship with waste. So nothing should be wasted, nothing should be simply thrown away, and everything should become usable material for the future. And one of our Avenues teams here, we've been working on this problem, and we call it Project Nibbler. So Nibbler, this is our concept prototype, would like to create a waste-free world. It's a patent-pending invention that we've been working on as a team of Avenues students, and what it does is it takes in your trash, it grinds it all up, it mixes it with some new 3D resin, and it prints it into a new object, in this case, a Lego brick. This combines the idea of reduce, reuse, and recycle into one simple machine, which closes the recycling loop for households within their own house. So at this point, you might be thinking, isn't this like recycling? And don't we already have a system for this? And I'm sure it's fine. And you might be thinking that, right? But while change is difficult, bear with me for a few minutes as I'd like to go through the recycling system a little bit deeper and show some more inefficiencies that exist within there. So let's say that you really avidly sort your recycling. You got all the plastic, all the glass, it's all in the bins, you know exactly how your local county says so. Well, where does it go? Well, obviously it has to be picked up. Usually it gets picked up by these trucks. Everyone's seen them before, right? And of course, these burn fossil fuels in themselves, and it's then transferred to a collection and sorting facility. Very exciting, I know. Which of course costs taxpayer money to run, which of course ties into that economic factor. It then gets shipped on another truck, and usually then onto a container ship, which also, you guessed it, burns fossil fuels. So this really is just this lovely cycle that's getting worse and worse. And of course, container ships themselves burn the dirtiest vehicles of any vessel on the globe. So let's say after all this, you're like, okay, great. It's gotten to the place where it needs to go. Surely now it gets recycled, right? And in this case, only sometimes does it actually gets recycled. Many times it ends up in this place. You might have seen this before, and this is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It's 4.5 times the size of Germany, And it's mostly caused by actually the recycling that we've been created, not necessarily trash that's flown into the waterways. So let me explain. So someone has to actually process the recycling, of course, right? And this actually becomes often dirty and dangerous work because recycling isn't necessarily pure. This ties into our first major point, contamination, right? So did you know the plastic cap and the plastic label on your water bottle is not actually recyclable? So that's one example, right? Have you also, for example, thrown out, let's say, a peanut butter jar like this that has just a little bit of peanut butter out that you haven't actually cleaned? Well, how about you've taken a plastic that you're looking at and you're like, that's probably fine. We can throw it out anyways, right, into the recycling bin. I'm sure it'll be okay. Well, in this case, what this does is people a lot of times end up throwing actual trash into the recycling bins. This is caused by an effect called greenwashing, in which consumers are led to believe that products are actually recyclable or that they're actually green, when in reality, they're not necessarily. And of course, this makes consumers feel better about their purchase. So, yeah. So since the 1980s, the plastics industry has spent tens of millions of dollars on advertising recycling, like you can see this here. And in a shocking article published in March of 2020, it reveals that the oil and plastic industries have known about this for a really long time, right? In 1974, an industry insider has actually come out saying, and I'll read this exactly, there's serious doubt that recycling plastic can ever be viable on an economic basis. So naturally, right? Recycling is born as this large tactic to entice consumers to spend more money and to throw more things away, right? So you're manipulated into thinking that all your products are green, all the things that you're buying, and that it's good for the environment, when in reality it's not. Only 9% of plastics have ever been recycled, even only once, right? So an example of greenwashing that we've all probably seen before is this symbol. Many people look at this symbol and are like, great, that means that my product fully 100% good to go in the recycling bin and will be good. However, that symbol on the left only shows that it is it's a plastics identifier code. So it'll just tell you what plastic your trash piece is actually made out of. It's not actually telling you that it's recyclable. So once again, most of the public doesn't know this because they've been kind of led into not knowing this in the first place. So it ends up in the recycling bin anyways, and it becomes a massive problem. So why exactly is this actually a problem? So it takes enormous amounts of effort to actually separate all of this trash and to sort out the salvageable items. So in the past, what has used to happen is that China used to buy a lot of our bulk recycling. So what used to happen is they used to take it, they used to use their cheap labor pools in order to separate it out, and then some parts of it get reused, some parts of it get thrown out, right? However, an abrupt policy change in 2018 has led actually China to stop taking recycling that is less than 95% pure. Most of our recycling in this country doesn't actually meet that standard in the first place. So at this point, it either gets kept in the States or sometimes it gets dumped into waterways, which of course, you can imagine, not great. So about 25% of our recycling is instantly lost to contamination, right? And since China doesn't want to receive our recycling, there's just nowhere for it to go, right? No one wants to take it. No one wants to take the responsibility of it because it's too expensive to process and to repurpose materials because it's just cheaper to buy and use virgin plastics, right? Bulk recycling is building up around the country. So some towns are just sending it to landfills because it's cheaper to do that. Others are paying out of pocket and to actually process them. And in the end, no one wants to deal with it. It's just being pushed down further and further along a chain that doesn't work. Right? So in the end, this uses this doesn't show just a crack in our system, but a full-on divide. So the more we uncover, the more we can realize that this system in general has been designed to fail. So this works as our Band-Aid for what we call the linear production cycle, in which an object is made just to be disposed of, right? So let's think of a water bottle, for example, or even a tech product in this case, because once you stop using it, it usually gets thrown out, right? And the recycling system works as a Band-Aid to make that system a little bit more efficient. However, what we really need to do is that we need to have a circular system like the one you see here, in which items are constantly being reused so we don't have the necessity for new virgin materials, for example. Nibbler is a solution to this problem because what it's able to do is basically grind up and eat whatever we're able to put into it. So say you have a dirty coffee cup, right? What we're drinking from upstairs. Let's say you have a mixed material object like a Pringles can, which the inside's made out of aluminum foil and the outside's made out of paper, for example, right? What this is able to do is it's able to break down any solid waste into its particulates, which is important because in traditional recycling, basically what ends up happening is the waste or the recycling that you're putting into it is being taken apart for its individual constituents. So all of its raw plastics, its raw paper, et cetera. So purity is very, very important in order for that material to maintain its properties after you go and recycle it. So Nibbler simply grinds up the things that you put into it, mixes it with resin, and turns it into a new object, so purity is not actually as important as in traditional recycling environments. Additionally, because this is a machine that's going to be able to fit into your house, what will end up happening is it reduces a lot of the environmental and economic costs of recycling. So shipping and processing recycling, of course, as we already mentioned, emits a ton of greenhouse gas and costs the government a lot of money, right? So in this case, actually, recycling a plastic cup could be more costly than just producing a new one. So what we've realized is that the optimal recycling rate is about 10%. More than that will actually cost more than what it's helping us. So because the way that Nibbler is designed, the waste never leaves your house, cutting out all of these centralized recycling costs. So the end goal of Nibbler. We want it to become very commonplace in the home. So we're able to not only help the climate crisis, however, we're also enabling the end user to have a lot more freedom. What I mean by this is that people are able to see their waste and be like, cool, we want to turn this into something new. We want to use this to make something else that will become helpful. So not only does it cut out the carbon costs of recycling, it also cuts out the carbon costs of actually making the new product that it's replacing. So what this is able to do is it shows a tangible benefit to the end user. So what I mean by that is that the end user is able to actually see how much less waste that they're putting into the environment, how much less that they're putting out, and because of that, it's able to kind of think more deeply about what their impacts are and how they're able to kind of make a more positive change. Additionally, with all the automation that we've been working on, Nibbler is going to be a machine in which it's as simple as just simply putting in your existing trash and feeding it a digital model file along with some virgin 3D resin, and it will be able to create any new object from that. So we're excited for the future of what Nibbler brings to us, and we hope that Nibbler will be an outlet for people to use their creativity and to also help save the environment at the same time. We thoroughly believe on Project Nibbler that shifting your mindset from a linear production environment to one that's more circular will be the future for sustainability and will allow people to kind of propel the greater good for future generations to come. So while this might seem lofty today, I thoroughly believe that it is something that is possible and that we've been working on. And I'm proud that Avenues is letting a team of students like us work on a project like this. So thank you, everyone.